left off with, I believe, line 72. That is, we finished line 72. The wise man must realize, picking up with 73, the wise man must realize how ghastly it will be when all the wealth of this world stands waste. As now here and there throughout this middle earth, walls stand blasted by wind, beaten by frost, the buildings crumbling. So, the wise man has to see. He says how horrible it will be when, notice, all the wealth of this world stands waste, demolished, destroyed. Okay? Wealth there doesn't just mean monetary wealth. He means everything produced by humanity. Right? J.R.R. Tolkien says in his essay on Beowulf that all Old English literature is literally, or not literally, all Old English literature is ultimately about one thing: the death of man and all his works. The death of humanity in everything we've produced. Okay. Remember the other day I talked about one of the themes of The Wanderer was lament? That's pretty much a lament. Everything we do is going to ultimately mean nothing or be nothing. All right? As now. So in the future, all the wealth is going to stand waste. As now, here and there, throughout this middle earth, walls stand blasted by wind, beaten by frost, the buildings crumbling. And the way some scholars read that is that whoever the author of, or composer if you want, of The Wanderer is, that individual was probably somewhat familiar, at least, with some of the Roman ruins in Anglo-Saxon England. For example, the town of Bath, okay, which, had broken walls, broken buildings, still had the pools, the baths. Okay, they weren't working at the time. And one thing to bear in mind, I don't think I mentioned this. How did Anglo-Saxons build? What did they use, for example, to build their halls with? Timber, trees. How did the Romans build? If you go to, you can go to Rome today. I've never been to Rome. It's one of the places on my bucket list. You can go to Rome today and you can go to the Colosseum. It's made out of stone. We've got anecdotal accounts. We've got eyewitness accounts of people coming to Rome for the first time and just being flabbergasted by what they saw, thinking, how can this be? Okay? In Old English, and we're going to see it in this poem, in Old English we have the phrase, used in a lot of words, Inta Yoek, translated, the work of giants. Okay? Because it was thought, there's no way we could build the city of Bath, the town of Bath, with its stone buildings. Or there's no way we, humans, could build Stonehenge. I don't know if you've ever seen Stonehenge. I've been to Stonehenge a few times. Some of those rocks are 20 tons. 20 feet tall, 8 feet wide, 5 feet thick. How in the world did somebody, without a crane, lift that like this? And that's even, Anglo-Saxons didn't know that the stones of Stonehenge weren't found right there. They came from Wales, some of them, over 180 miles away. How did they do that? Had to be giants. Giants had to have built these things. All right? So he says, all of our stuff is going to crumble and waste, just as now we see buildings crumbling and wasting. The wine halls topple. The wine hall. He's talking there about the lordly halls, the halls that chieftains sit in and dispense their treasure, dispense their judgment and such from. The rulers lie deprived of all joys. That's a beautiful euphemism. They lie deprived of all joys. How do they lie? Dead. There is no joy in death that is in the grave, right? Because the speaker is going to allude to a different joy when we get to the end of the poem. The proud old troops all fell by the wall. Fell. They were killed. Why were they by the wall? They're defending it. They're defending, anachronistic term, they're defending the castle. They're defending the fortress. And notice what we're told characterizes these old troops. What was their mentality? They were proud. To be a good Germanic soldier or warrior, you had to have a certain amount of pride. And I don't just mean, pride in a job well done. I mean, you had to be kind of hubristic. Like, I'll take them on all by myself. Okay? So they all fell by the wall. And then we get descriptions of what are called the beasts of war and of how one can die. Okay? War carried off some. Those defending the wall sent them on the way. Like another nice euphemism. They just kind of went their way. One, a bird carried off over the high seas. This isn't some weird fantasy thing like a pterosaur comes out of, the land of time forgot, etc. What does it mean, one, a bird carried off over the seas? It's after death. Again, it's not talking about a bird picking up an entire corpse. What do we see? What can you see in battlefields a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks after the battle? Vultures. Doing what? Picking away at the bodies. Or someone who is hanged. Where do the vultures go first? They don't go for the arms, the fingers, the flesh. They get the soft parts. The eyes. The tongue. Okay. So, war carried off some. One, a bird carried off over the high seas. One, the gray wolf shared with death. And one, the end one is giving us emphasis. You're told as a writer, save the emphasis for the end of the sentence. Why? That's what people are left with. Or if you're a speaker, save the emphasis for the ends of your sentences, the ends of your paragraphs. Have the final thing be, the last and final devotion, so to speak, from like Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. The final measure of devotion. One, a sad-faced man covered in an earthen grave. Now, what has the wanderer already told us about himself? He mentions that he had to, ever since long ago, line 22, I hid my gold-giving friend in the darkness of earth. I buried my Lord. And now here, in one, a sad-faced man, we've already been told that the wanderer is modkeri, weary of mind, full of cares in his mind. In one, a sad-faced man covered in an earthen grave. The creator of men, God, thus destroyed this walled city. He's not saying like, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. God didn't rain hellfire down on. He's saying, ultimately, it's God that does this. Until there it is, the old work of giants, the ENGL, stood empty. And the word for empty there is line 87. We're going to get to this part in a minute. IDLU, stood, IDLU. What does that kind of sound like in modern English? What's it close to in modern English? Go ahead. Change the final vowel. Idle. Idle. What's it mean to be idle? If your car is idling, you're at a red light, right? And your car is just idling. What's it not doing? What is the car designed to do? What is its purpose? Its end. To move you. Okay? Point A to point B. If it's at a red light just idling, it's not doing its purpose, right? It's useless. It's empty. It's wasted. He says, the Creator men thus destroyed this walled city until the old work of giants stood idle. Idle how? What's the purpose of a city? To house people. And what are the people doing in the city? Going about their daily business, living their lives, working, playing, loving, fighting, the whole 9 yards. And instead, is there somebody out there? Instead, what's it doing? Nothing. It no longer is fulfilling its reason for existence without the sounds of their former citizens. I understand the translation empty. I kind of like using the modern English word idle, however. Because if you're idle, it's like you're frozen in time. It's like Han Solo in Carbonite. He's not really Han Solo. He's a statue. Because people are meant to move, to do, and such. So, he who deeply considers, notice this isn't just a passing thought. It's not like you're waiting in McDonald's and you suddenly ponder the complexities of life. He who deeply considers with wise thoughts this foundation in this dark life. Trying to see, yeah. What? Old in spirit. Old in spirit. Earlier he said, you got to live through many winters in order to acquire wisdom. Now he's kind of suggesting, the speaker is kind of suggesting, you don't have to be physically old, but you got to be mentally, spiritually old. You have to, what? Think about everything that's going to happen in this world. You got to project forward. That's part of becoming old in spirit. It's like aging with the world in spirit. He does what? Often remembers. So, let me back up. That's one way of interpreting that. What's another way of interpreting that old in spirit? What happens as you get older and older and older and older, eventually, you die, right? So the old in spirit could also imply longing for death, just being worn out and tired, just being ready to go. Okay? He does what? He often remembers. so many ancient slaughters and says these words. Why does he remember ancient slaughters? Well, remember the context. Who's the speaker? An old warrior, an old thane, okay? An old spearman, swordsman. And he says these words, Where quam matter? Where quam madu? Where quam madu yiva? M-A, that's called an Ev. It's a D with a cross on the T. That's an A. Madum yiva, G. Where quam simbla yesetu, Gesetu. Where sinden celadremas? Your translation. Where has the horse gone? Where quam mar? That is, where came the horse? What's happened to it? Mare, M-A-R-E. Okay, that's where that comes from. Where cum magu? Where is the rider? This isn't literally rider, this is man. Where's the man? Connected to the horse. Where came, where are, if you want, the madum, treasure giver. So, where's the horse? Where's the man? Where's the giver of treasure? Keep in mind, symbolically, the speaker kind of implies he's standing at one of these rotted, crumbling walls, and he's looking at it, and he's thinking deeply. He's pondering on the existence of humanity, and says, "Where's the horse? Why? Because this used to be a hall, and the hall would have the horses for the riders, not necessarily in the hall, but some of them did. Okay, where is the rider? Where is the ring giver? The man who sat front and center in this hall. Where quam simbla yesetu? Where are the seats yesetu of the feast?" So the hall's empty. What's left of the hall? There aren't any seats left. Where are the cella? It's Old English for hall. If you know J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, at one point some of the characters go to a place called Meduseld. Medu, mead, seld, hall, the mead hall. He names the mead hall just mead hall, right? Where are the hall dremas? We know this word because we have it in modern English. Take off the AS. The hall dreams. But it's not really dreams because the word dream in Old English means joys. So you wouldn't use the word dream to describe a nightmare. Nightmare is a totally different kind of experience, not a dream. So, where is the horse gone? Where is the rider? Where is the giver of gold? Where are the seats of the feast? Where are the joys of the hall? That's all part of what's called the ubi sunt motif. U-B-I-S-U-N-T. It's Latin. Okay? And that's because there are a lot of Latin poems that begin ubi sunt. Where are? 1960s. It's a very famous song by the trio Peter, Paul, and Mary. Anti-war song. Not written by them. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Okay? Where are all the, and they kept asking this, and it was all about war is killing them all. The flowers, symbolic children and such. So, oh, the bright cup, oh, the brave warrior, oh, the glory of princes, how the time passed away. Slipped into nightfall as if it had never been. Notice, in that last line and a half, it's time that has passed away. and time that has slipped in the nightfall as if it had never been. But that also refers back to all of these things. The horse has slipped into nightfall as if it had never been. The rider has slipped into nightfall as if he had never been. The ring giver, the king, the joys of the feast, or the seats of the feast, the joys of the hall, they are as if they had never been. What's the difference between being gone and as if they had never been? Being remembered? Okay. Which one?
If you're gone, then you can still be remembered. But if it's as if you've never been, then you've never existed, no one can talk about it.
It's like Men in Black. I'm going to pull out the little thing and go, beep. And your memory is wiped clear. You have no recollection. The speaker is saying, while standing possibly at this crumbling wall, it's as if everything that informed this place, everything that filled it when it wasn't idle, it's like they never existed. What is one thing, apparently, humans have a need for? Because it survives in all of our literature and it survives in all of our mythology. What do each of us want to know will happen after we are gone? We will be remembered. We will have made a mark. Somebody will say, Sherman, whatever. Okay? If you saw the recent, several years old, and I just forgot the title. Disney movie. Anybody know which one? Coco. About the Day of the Dead. Okay? It's a hard one for me to talk about because when my mom had Alzheimer's, even as far as a couple years before she died, she was already not recognizing me. I mean, literally. There was one night I was standing at their kitchen sink doing the dishes. And she kind of shuffled up to me and, said something about I was a nice man for doing the dishes. Now, how long have we known you? And I said, pretty long time. This was, what year is this, 21? This would have been 2013, about 2 years before she died. Something like that. And I said, pretty long time. All right, very nice. And she, went off on her way. Okay? A year later, it was whoosh. Okay? What's the point? In Coco, what's the big theme of that film? Sorry to give it away if you haven't seen it. Watch it anyways.
Being remembered.
Why?
Because you live on in the, I forgot what it's called, but it's basically, you get remembered, and then once you're forgotten, you die like a second time.
You live in the afterlife as long as you're remembered here. As long as one person remembers you. You have an existence after death. But when nobody remembers you, you start to fade. And we see characters in the thing fade and disappear because the last person that remembers them stops. Okay? That's what he's getting at. It's as if none of these people who used to be here ever existed. There still stands in the path of the dear warriors a wall wondrously high with serpentine stains. Nobody knows what's meant by that serpentine stains. We don't know if that means that there is somehow built into the remains of the wall, originally was there, stones laid in such a way that it looks like there were snakes in it. Okay. A storm of spears took away the warriors. They died in battle. Frost falling. Storm of spears, not steers. Spears took away the warriors. Bloodthirsty weapons, weird the mighty. Notice, it's not the people that were bloodthirsty. It was the weapons. The speaker is suggesting what about weapons? And Tolkien does something with this idea in one of his stories that got published in the book about Turin. I can't remember what the story is, but he has a weapon that kind of does this. They want blood. Why?
That's why they were made.
Because if they don't get it, they stand idle. A weapon not used is a useless, pointless, purposeless weapon. That's why, people say, oh, we can build this weapon, but we'll never use it. Nope. It's kind of like, Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you build it, it will be used. Bloodthirsty weapons. Weird the mighty. Again, what is weird? Fate, what will be, will be. The world is as it is. And storms batter these stone walls. Frost falling binds up the earth. How does frost bind up the earth? It covers it with ice, right? It freezes. The howl of winter when blackness comes. Night's shadow looms. Sends down from the north harsh hailstones in hatred of men. Look at those lines from 99 through 105. What's the tenor of that part of this speech? What mood is the speaker evoking? Is this, the glory of war, the glory of human life and human existence? Its war ends up where? If you're lucky, 6 feet in the ground. If you're not lucky, part of you is taken by a bird over the sea. Another part of you is eaten by the wolves and the other carrion creatures. And if that's not enough to do it, Mother Nature in all her glory, just sends down hail and frost and snow. Notice, these are in hatred of men. The speaker is suggesting what about humanity's relationship with the natural world and weather? Yeah, it's a war. It is a war. It's not, oh, Gaia. Gaia just wants us to love her and treat her kindly. If we'll get rid of all, petroleum products and all the natural stuff and just live with nature and be at one with nature, everything will be fine. No. Read Sir Walter Raleigh's response. Oh, take that back. Are we reading Walter Raleigh? I'll have to see if it's in here. Walter Raleigh, English explorer, read his response to Christopher Marlowe's The Passionate Shepherd. I think this is the title. Passionate Shepherd to, this is the part I'm not positive about. Passionate shepherd to his lover. And Raleigh's response is something like the nymph's reply. I think that's what it is. The nymph's reply. This kind of begins, come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove. And he goes on, Christopher Marlowe, goes on, his narrator, goes on and talks about all the wonderful joys we'll have living out in nature, having sex on beds of rose petals and blah, 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 blah. It'll be great, kind of Woodstock, modern day Bonnaroo, without the mud. Walter Raleigh writes a response and says, I would come live with you and be your love, and we would all the pleasures prove, if there weren't thorns with those roses, if there weren't rocks under the straw mats, if the weather didn't turn cold, etc. If. And then he finally, the speaker, the nymph, the female speaker finally replies, and if you could show me that swains, country, boys, hearts are ever true. In other words, you just want to get me in the sack. I know what this is all about. You're trying to pull a fast one over me, all right? So, what's going on there is Marlowe is creating this image, nature soft and wonderful. Raleigh, who, if I remember correctly, was in the Tower of London when he wrote his response. So he knew about hardship. Says, not so much. All is toilsome in the earthly kingdom. Toilsome. What's toilsome mean? This class can be toilsome, right? I don't shut up and you're sitting there scribbling notes. A pain in the you-know-what. But it's not just that, because that's passive. Hard work. All is toilsome in the earthly kingdom. The working of weird changes the world under heaven. Okay. Do we have time for this? Let me check one thing real quickly. Working of weird, line 107. Yeah, okay. He said, the working of weird changes the world under heaven. The Old English word that he uses for changeth is onwindeth, turns. Okay? So feet, if you want, what will be, changes everything down here. Why? And why is it under heaven? Here's the earth. Up here is heaven. Okay? And even though this speaker doesn't mention it, this is an idea we're going to see later on, and I think the speaker is partially aware of it. Here's the moon. Okay. Here's the orbit of the moon. It was a commonplace. That is an idea almost universally held, that everything beneath the orbit of the moon was mutable, changeable, impermanent. Dante will really play with this idea in the third book of the Divine Comedy. Okay? Heaven is the opposite. Heaven is permanent. Heaven is stable. Heaven is unchangeable. In Orthodox Church, one of the prayers about God talks about God being ever the same, immutable, unchangeable. Okay? So, everything down here, mutable, changeable, impermanent. The working of weird changes the world under heaven. And then we get this very, very famous passage. Gets anthologized a lot. Here, wealth is fleeting. And the word used for fleeting is, let me make sure I have this spelling right when I put it down. This symbol, by the way, it's called an ash, A-E-S-C. It's a runic symbol that essentially just represents the sound ah, as in cat, mat, fat, sat, etc. So, lana. It's from this word that we get two modern English words, loan and lean. Here, wealth is fleeting, Old English. Her bith fail lana. Fail meaning wealth. It's the word from which we get fee. Right? Her bith frowned lana. Here is friend. Now notice the translation Lisa gives for this. Fleeting. What does fleeting imply? Impermanent. But it's even stronger than just impermanent. Quick. It's quickly impermanent. It changes, boom, like in the blink of an eye. Okay? So, herewith fail, wealth, fleeting. Herewith friend, fleeting. Herewith man, lana, man is fleeting. Herewith my lana, kinsman, fleeting. Or, here is wealth, lean, thin, sparse. One possible meaning. Here is wealth, loaned. Here is friend, loaned. Here is man, loaned. Here is kinsman, loaned. What's the difference between fleeting and loaned? If you have a student loan, supposedly, what are you going to be required to do? Unless, Elizabeth Warren gets her way or Bernie Sanders gets his way. You're going to have to pay it back. It's got a promissory note. On X date, payback. Here, wealth is loaned. That implies it's given what? For a time. Here, friend is loaned, given for a time. That is not to be expected to stay. Really changes the meaning of it when you look at this translation of that word. Okay? Shakespeare's going to play on that idea of friends and family and such being loaned. Ben Jonson will, when we read his poem, on the death of his first son, and then on the death of his, it's not actually on the death, it's on his daughter and on his son. They're about the deaths of his two eldest children. Okay? One was 5 and one was 7, I believe. Daughter was 5, son was 7. Here, woman is fleeting. Sorry, magus, not kinsman's woman. All the framework of this earth will stand idle. Everything in this world, the speaker says, will stand useless, idle, purposeless, not just empty. Why purposeless? Why useless? Remember Cadman's hymn? Go back to it for just a moment. Where we are told, he first shaped, 5th line, he first shaped for men's sons heaven as a roof, afterwards prepared the earth for men. Why will it be useless? Because there won't be any people left. He's saying eventually, whenever that time comes, there will be no people left on earth, and the earth will stand useless. It won't be fulfilling its purpose, because its purpose, according to the speaker, is fulfilled in us. All right? So said the wise one in his mind. What does that mean, in his mind? Old English snotor on modo, your footnote tells you, could also mean the one who was wise in mind. So said the one who was wise in his mind, versus so said the wise one in his mind. What's the difference between the two? Well, the one who says it in his mind, he's just thinking this. The other one verbalizes it, puts it out there. Sitting apart in meditation. That kind of implies he says it in his mind. He's thinking this. Okay? But notice where he is when he's thinking this. Where can you not be thinking this? Use the image I used anachronistically earlier. Waiting in line at McDonald's. This requires what? This requires some silence. This requires some getting away. Some really thinking about, Marvin Gaye. What's going on? He is good who keeps his word. And you've got a gloss down there, keeps faith. The Old English is actually 1, 2, 11, 1, 12. Tilbith sethe his treoa Yahudith. Tilbith sethe, to the one who, his treoa, his truth, his faith, his loyalty, he holds. All right? He is good who keeps his word. If you mean by keeps his word, he keeps his faith, not faith necessarily out there. His faith in what he holds to be true about the world and about the people in it and about those who are near and dear to him. And the man who never too quickly shows the anger in his breast, unless he already knows the remedy a noble man can bravely bring about. So, it is good, or it will be good. The tilbith sethe doesn't mean he is. It means it will be good too. So the one who holds faith, the one who keeps his truth, right, that is true to others, it will be good for him. Similarly, the one who doesn't too quickly show the anger in his breast. Somebody says something, you just want to, pause, take a moment. Unless he already knows the remedy a noble man can bravely bring about. What's the remedy? How am I going to solve this problem that raises the anger in his breast? What's the speaker talking about? Don't make promises you can't fulfill. I wish this would, be imprinted on every presidential candidate's mind. Don't make promises you know you can't keep. It will be well for one who seeks, the Old English, dwelleth thamthe him ara seeketh. It will be well to the one who for himself are first line, are yebideth, favor, mercy, grace, yebideth, expects, experiences, awaits, endures. It will be well for him who favor, grace, mercy, seeks. Consolation from the Father in heaven. Frovra to Father on heaven. Frovra, consolation. Therus eal selfastnung standeth. Where, for all of us, it's one reading for the L, the fastnung, how does he translate that? Stability. Where for all of us, the stability stands. Okay. fastnun, firmness, the implacableness, if you want, the unmovingness, the permanence, the immutability stands. Now go back and look at the entire line. It will be well for one who seeks mercy. Consolation from the Father in heaven, where for us all stability stands. It'll be good for you if you seek mercy from God. Why? What's everything on this world ended? Idlu, emptiness, idleness. Everybody dies. Impermanence, changeability, reigns here. If you want permanence, if you want things to stop changing, look for it somewhere else. Don't look for it here, the speaker says. Now, a lot of scholars think that these last several lines got added later. Some Christian monk who had a copy of the poem, got to the end of line 110. All the framework of this earth will stand empty. And thought, crap, that's a downer. People hear that, they're just going to want to commit suicide. I mean, if you're telling people there is no meaning to this earth, all we do is live and die, that's it. Why go on, right? And so the thought is, this Christian monk tacked on the last several lines. Notice, the way you have it in the book. Line 110 ends with a quotation mark. Why? Because that entire passage, beginning with line 8, begins with a quotation mark. Thus spoke the wanderer, mindful of troubles. Da 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 da. And here's what, by the quotation marks, the thus refers to. Often, and he goes on. Often alone, etc., etc. Right? I don't think that's right. That is, I don't think those last several lines are tacked on. I think if you read the poem really, really carefully, it's pretty clear the poet has this mentality even in the midst of the darkest part of the poem. And partly one of the reasons I read that is because of how I read, how I interpret the Are Yebidith. Favor, mercy, grace, experiences, expects, endures, awaits. Yeah, I actually think it's all of those. It's experiencing that mercy, favor, grace here now, but that mercy, favor, grace is not what? Got a lot of Christian churches today kind of, I won't even say imply, really preach, really emphasize. Life-loving Jesus should result in what? Everything should be wonderful. And if it's not, what's the danger of that theology? If it's not, the person whose life sucks has screwed up somehow. It's because of, your sin, so to speak. This speaker would not accept that, all right? This speaker is saying, what about life here? There are no guarantees. Even the really good people die. How do you know? Because little kids die of COVID. I mean, real little kids. Babies die of COVID. That's not fair. Life isn't guaranteed. Part of me really thinks Thomas Jefferson entirely screwed up in writing the Declaration of Independence. Because where are we guaranteed a right to life? I mean, you go out and you get hit by a car. Yeah, that right's gone. Liberty? No, you have to fight for liberty. Pursuit of happiness? Okay, maybe. You look at the entire history of humanity prior to 1776, where are those things? They're not there, all right? So the speaker is emphasizing what? Life down here, like being on a rocking boat. You don't like life down here? You're not going to find stability here, so look for it elsewhere. So, talks about exile in lament. Exile from where? Well, the speaker literally says, from his homeland where his Lord reigned. But he also says, I had to bury my Lord. Now, you could probably make an allegorical reading of this poem and say the speaker maybe is one of those who buried Jesus. His Lord died, right? And then had to make his way in this world. And you want stability? You want where people look elsewhere. We'll stop there, but that kind of serves as a nice segue to the seafarer. If you haven't, yes, question.
This goes back to the serpentine vines on the wall.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking about them. Could they be vines? Like if it's
Could be. It could be that there had been vines on the wall and they kind of came off. But he says serpentine patterns in the wall. The what line is that exactly?
98.
98. Yeah. Standeth new unlost, that stands now at the last. The dear old warriors, beneath a high wondrous wall, weird lichum fog. Weird lichum means like worms or serpents. Weird there means like dragons, but wingless dragons. Okay. Fa means adorned, decorated. And again, what some scholars suggest is it's possibly how stone is laid in the wall to create this image. Go to the British Museum and look at the gates to the entrance of Nineveh, I think it's Nineveh. Man, big, massive stone gates that the Brits stole. And you can go there and patterned into the stone are these fantastic images. Okay, you can look them up online. So I think that's the closest we can get. If you haven't seen it, there is a quiz online. It's up. It's good until tomorrow night, I believe. It's just 10 questions, multiple choice. It won't count against you. It only counts this one as like extra credit. It's just to give you an idea of kinds of things I'll look for a multiple choice one. Same kind of things will be looked for in a short answer one. It's just, it'll look different. All right. That's all.